All right, you know why you're here. One Piece chapter 1043 that lit the entire fandom ablaze with both positivity and negativity. That's correct.
Correct.
Not everyone is a fan of this chapter and these events. However, I'm going to give you my full review of the chapter and break it down systematically. You know the drill. Pacing, character, and story. But if you want to see my initial live reaction, link in the box below to Cole Requiem, of course on Twitch as well for that stream, for my reaction to the chapter, and of course the first take as well on this channel that I dropped on Saturday. Because, man, first things first, let's talk about this chapter's pacing. For this chapter, there are around 6 parts to the chapter. Number 1 is that we actually follow Kaido for the most part. After we see Gear 4 powering down, then he takes out Blue Scarf, then he's jumped down to the Skull Dome. We have minor cuts to Momonosuke and the last CP0 dude that's still active at this point in time, and also Kawamatsu are the characters. That's overall the first part of the chapter. Number 2 is that we do cut to Law and Kid being attacked, and now they're fighting again. I mean, that's just
insanity. Is.
Oh my god. No.
Hell no.
Number 3 is Neko and Kara going back in to see what's going on. Number 4 is that we shift to the castle basement where there's fire everywhere. Number 5 is Yamato and Momo's conversation where we do come back for Kaido for an attack. And then number 6 is back to the rooftop with Luffy in conjunction with Momo and Zunisha. So when it comes to this chapter, there are actually more parts than 6 parts, technically speaking. But the chapter structure is intertwined in a different manner than usual, where they're not just section by section by section, but more so we cut through different parts of the island and different areas through major character movements, in this case predominantly Kaido, where Kaido goes from the rooftop down below, and then we have various viewpoints from down below. This does give the chapter structure more ground to cover since they aren't separate disjointed parts that don't involve each other. But there is again like that one part where we cut to Nekomamushi and Carrot, and then also randomly the basement where there's just fire everywhere. But overall, the pace of this chapter was actually pretty good. Not as good as last week, which was great. That was outstanding. But still, nonetheless, pretty solid. That's number 1, overall, the pacing. Number 2, for character. And surprisingly, there is a lot here, like the last chapter where there low-key was a lot. Number 1, Momonosuke. Now, Momonosuke is able to actually sense that Luffy's voice is gone after Kaido's attack, the Thunder Bell Bagua. And Momonosuke has done this before. It's actually a really small moment, but it's something that's coming back now. And it's showing that Momonosuke is actually getting better with his haki. Because in chapter 1008, Momo was able to tell that Luffy was greatly weakened while he was fighting on the rooftop despite hiding in Yamato's clothes. But the thing that's interesting is that in conjunction with the voice of all things, how does this work exactly? And I say that because I think it's very clear that the voice of all things and observation haki have a lot of similarities. And when he awakened the voice of all things, there is the possibility that in the process, he also awakened his observation haki. It could be the case here where Momonosuke is actually sensing Luffy's voice via the voice of all things and not observation haki, but again, it's weird. So I have to assume, since he used the word voice, like Law later on in the chapter, that it is observation haki. So that's number 1 for character, Momonosuke. Number 2 is CP0. Now, Blue Scarf accepts his death without a word said or even an attempt to fight back. His duty to the elders outweighs everything else. The main reason why you probably envy Drake so much in the last chapter, because Drake could freely enact his sense of justice, and he clearly, Blue Scarf, clearly lacks this freedom. And in a way, it makes him look and feel like a slave, which is going to be important later on in this video, the word slave, okay? But for Blue Scarf, it's almost like the Gorosei have something over him that he can't escape. But ultimately, he's a tool. And this tool, Blue Scarf, has fulfilled its purpose, and he's clubbed to the side by Kaido, eviscerated. And the other CP0 dude, who can also sense that Blue Scarf's voice is gone, that he's, quote, dead, he tips his hat to show a sign of camaraderie to his boy. And the idea I kind of get here is no one will remember his sacrifice but him. That kind of deal. Which actually, in a way, is kind of like the inverse of Dr. Hiluluk, I think it's such a name, in Drum Island.
Dr. Hiluluk!
Where remembering someone's name is a very important thing, because that means that in that sense they never die and their will is carried on. But these CP0 guys, I mean, this guy potentially just died and we don't know his name. It just goes to show you even more so how much of a tool, not in like a beefcake jacked out, roided out way, no, but how much of a tool these guys actually are to the world government, the girls say. So that is character point number 2. Number 3 is Nami. Nami standing up tall to Kaido, calling him a liar. I thought it was pretty good for a character. I ain't gonna lie. I'd argue one of her better moments in this arc for damn sure. It's almost like Nami is the stand-in for Zoro and Sanji, who denied openly the claim that Luffy was defeated in chapter 1014. But in this case, Sanji and Zoro are out, and even though we see Robin and Brook fighting in that same chapter, they don't openly, as well as Jinbei, they don't openly express their denial for Luffy's death. But here, Nami is a member of the weak trio standing up to Kaido for a moment saying, no, I don't believe you, you oversized snake, Luffy's not dead, hell no. Which is a nice contrast to Chopper, who just cries, who just sits.
Pathetic.
Next thing here, real quick, combat feat for Fukucho Manga. He can block the blast breath with his undying tissel. I could be botching the name big time, which I probably am, but I think it's called a tissel. It's the same big phoenix shield wing that he used to block King of Wildfire's Imperial Flame in chapter 1022. Now the next perfect character is actually Momonosuke versus Yamato. In this, we actually see kind of like a clash of ideology between Momonosuke and Yamato. Momonosuke doesn't want to let any more of his people die and would rather surrender, even if it meant living for another day. But Yamato then coming out saying how this is not how a samurai does things, and how a life of slavery is not a life at all, and that the death of all the people before them that led up to this point would be in vain if they didn't win this battle. Therefore, it behooves them all to fight to the death. Momonosuke might have been swayed by her words, and we'll see, but I did like that character interaction between Momonosuke and Yamato, where there's that clash of ideology. But his heart's in the right place. Because remember this, according to Oden's words, during the Hour of Legends, he stated specifically that it was the Kozuki clan that were the ones that closed the borders of Wano country. So Momo's heart is in the right place, and he is acting like his predecessors centuries ago. And then finally, the last component for story, Monkey.
Why?
Monkey.
D. Luffy. Luffy is going through, maybe you didn't catch in the chapter. I mean, it was kind of subtle, hidden in the corner like a small little panel. But Luffy is going through some sort of transformation, and no one knows what is going on. Well, we have ideas. We can theorize, okay? But Luffy is going through some sort of metamorphosis. And for character, for the most part for him, it means a power-up, but of course, that it's far deeper than that, because for character, it looks like Luffy is Joy Boy in some capacity. And that is the biggest thing for character in this chapter, and the reason why everybody is losing their minds in both negative and positive ways. And now finally, the last component for this chapter, the story. And it is very clear that for story, oh my goodness, this is the lion. We are lions.
We are lions.
This is the lion's share of importance for this chapter. So number 1, Kaido wins the fight against Luffy. Also very surprising is that we get a title card too, where they use the words rooftop specifically, which indicates to me there are probably changing locations for the final battle between Luffy and Kaido. And I would argue it's to have an audience. Onigashima and Wano Country potentially will be watching this whole thing go down between Luffy and Kaido. And it is unclear if Luffy's actually dead, quote dead, in a real sense. Just because someone's voice is gone doesn't mean that they're dead. We've seen NL eliminate people from his competition. Their voices were gone, but they ultimately come back all the same. So just because the voice is gone doesn't mean that they're actually, quote, dead, like an earnest to goodness, like ODA death. Speaking of which, Blue Scarf, for story, he could be dead, but we're not too sure. He could be dead, but we don't see a mangled up corpse with a smashed-in face on the ground. So Blue Scarf is, quote, dead until further notice. Now, Kaido descends onto the lower levels and seeks Momonosuke to end the war. This, of course, is Oda setting up for the final leg of Wano Country. This might lead to Momonosuke and Yamato fighting against Kaido for a period of time if we don't, very important here, if we don't immediately go into the Joy Boy Luffy versus Kaido fight in the next chapter. So it's very possible here that we do have a few more chapters of build up with, let's say, Luffy. We cover some things with, let's say, Hiri and Orochi, and then maybe Denjiro. We find what's going on with Denjiro. What was Raizo's plan that he had in play? Things like this could be in the next chapter, and then after, let's say, 2 or 3 chapters, then we go back to what's going on with Luffy, and so on and so forth. And Yamato and Momonosuke fight against Kaido for a period of time could be a thing here. Because, recall this, we haven't seen Momonosuke in human form as an adult now. During this fight, we could see Momonosuke back into human form and ultimately see the face that made Shinobu cry when she did turn him into an adult. Plus, we have not seen the Ame no Hibakiri be used in this arc. This might be a big factor coming up too. Possible. Now also, important here too, but low key, Momonosuke has stopped pulling Onigashima. So this could give Kaido the chance to move it back on course straight for the Flower Capital, which also mean in the future we have a much bigger audience to witness the oncoming Joy Boy Luffy versus Kaido fight. Speaking of which, Luffy,
My power is without rival.
of course, is active again and transforming in some way. Now, very important details here, I think. Luffy is emitting steam from various parts of his body, and his hair is potentially-ish kind of liquefying. So the steam would indicate that there's heat being generated somewhere, like for his Gear 2. And so if heat is being generated, which would in some way be in lockstep with the heat for a person that utilizes fire, i.e. a sun god, Nika? What up, my Nikas? That's right. So there is a possibility that what's upcoming could be in conjunction, at least immediately, with Gear 2. Gear 2 Luffy, that's very possible. And then note that this could just be the beginning of his transformation, or the hair change is a more stylistic change and doesn't have much merit to it. Possible. Also, because there are clearly signs of Luffy being Joy Boy, also Nika, recall Oden's words in chapter 972 about the entire world awaiting for a figure to show up, and how after 800 years, the country must be prepared to welcome and work with them. And it seems to be coming full steam ahead, no pun intended, for Monkey D. Luffy ASAP. So that component right there is pivotal for the entire story. Not just Wano, the entire story of One Piece. But we're not done yet. I put this after Luffy's transformation, because Zunisha can hear the drums of liberation for the first time in 800 years from Luffy. In terms of story, that's potentially even more important than Luffy's transformation. I'm gonna say it again.
That's right.
The drums of liberation are potentially even more important than Luffy's actual transformation itself, which does raise the likelihood, absolutely, that Joy Boy was an original user of the Gomu Gomu no Mi, or the progenitor itself for the Gomu Gomu no Mi, which is a big deal, or whatever it's called in its true name. That's a huge deal there. But in a general sense, it could also be the sound that someone makes when someone is truly worthy of the title of Joy Boy, plus probably, I'd argue, a member of the D clan, because I'd argue that the D clan has ties to Joy Boy. And I say that because remember what Kaido's thoughts about Luffy were about not being Joy Boy when he got punked off the island by Kaido earlier in the arc. Or King the Wildfire allude to Kaido being Joy Boy. Luffy, at this moment, might have finally earned the right and the title to be Joy Boy in the process of awakening. And then also, shout out to Twitch chat, this whole situation with the reemergence of Joy Boy in this era may have been hinted at when we first learned about the Bink Sake song, because part of the lyrics of the song say something like this: "Now the waves are dancing, beat upon the drums. If you lose your nerve, this breath could be your last, but if you just hold on, the morning sun will rise." The drums are noted too, the last breath is noted too, in this case Luffy's quote death, and holding on until the morning sunrise, the dawn, or the awakening, if you would in this case, of Luffy, Literal's powers, but also potentially Joy Boy itself. So if the Bink Sake song was in reference to Joy Boy's emergence, then that would be another major hit from Thriller Bark that this was going to happen as someone who was bound to be the next Joy Boy. And then finally, the last leg, when it comes to story for this chapter, because he's now going through this transformation of some kind, thereby somehow gaining aspects, at least aspects of Joy Boy, this makes sense now as to why Zunisha wasn't more active when Luffy was on his back. Because at that time in Zou, Luffy wasn't worthy to be Joy Boy. But now Luffy is worthy, and the awakening, I'd argue, is happening. Which means that Luffy has probably now earned the right to command Zunisha, since Zunisha was one of Joy Boy's comrades. And commanding Zunisha is a really, really big deal.
Damn right.
If I'm a Kainu, and it's the final war, and these brothers pull on up with Zunisha,
I yield. Please no more.
That's how much of a flex Zunisha is.
That's true.
Now, that all being said, some general thoughts here, some very important general thoughts. Number one, I was very surprised that the Viz chapter didn't have the suffix for Nika when Luffy grinned. That, I think, is pivotal. Pivotal. I cannot. It damn near confirms that Luffy, of course, is Joy Boy, but also is Nika, the sun god. So with that smile and that smirk, Nika, and that suffix being there in the scans, that is thumbs up ahoy. But for some reason, it's not there in the Viz. Number two, notice how Kaido, the angry, sinister, as some would say in Wano Country, Dragon God, Dragon Goddo, notice how he is ready now to usher in slavery for the whole country. However, on the flip side, we have Luffy in this chapter smiling, producing the drumming beat and the sound of liberation, as was in the old days. It is a symbolic polar opposite from Kaido to Luffy in this one chapter. And again, Blue Scarf seems to be like he's a Gorosei, an elder slave. The themes of slavery and the themes of liberation are there in spades. And it just so happens that Joy Boy was revealed first on Fishman Island, an island where many people were Tenryubito slaves. Yeah. Otis sometimes build different, sometimes build different. And we're not done yet. Because, potentially, number three, if Luffy did die a genuine death, and death is a part of becoming Joy Boy, then this could explain the reason why Kaido wanted to kill himself. He believed in the idea that he was Joy Boy, understood somehow that death was a part of this process. To become Joy Boy was the idea, of course, and he tried it out, but he failed time and time again. And it's also very interesting that Kaido in chapter 994 would talk about how he loves the way of the samurai and how death completes a person. So from this perspective, when we look at Luffy and he's going through probably his Dove Fruit Awakening, he is reaching his devil fruit completion, because the awakening, as far as we know, is the highest degree of mastery a devil fruit user can achieve. And one of the catalysts could be death or nigh death. Look, I don't want to theory craft too hard for this video, but I will do a video specifically tailored to theory crafting real soon this week on what exactly is going on, potentially with Monkey D. Luffy. I'm gonna give you all my ideas, all my theories, and we'll just see what sticks in the future, maybe, if one of them sticks. However, I need to be a Debbie Downer, okay? Debbie Cole over here, Debbie Cole.
Oh, brother.
I need to stress this. The execution is going to be hella important for the next few chapters to really judge if this is actually great or not. Yes, there's a chance where this whole situation for One Piece's storytelling and writing and Luffy could be bad. Bad, B-A-D, bad. But it all depends what happens next. Things like destiny and fate are very touchy subjects, especially with former Naruto readers who read One Piece now, and my God, these niggas just crawled out of the woodwork.
Hello there.
And a lot of them disparaging what's going on without even knowing the full scope, because no one knows the full scope but Oda. The fact of the matter is that this is not Naruto. The same seeds, or lack thereof, that Kishimoto had for unveiling Ashura, his whole soul connection with Naruto, and what's going on for Luffy and Joy Boy, I don't think are anywhere even close on the same plateau, on the same level. Especially when you look at the level of forethought and insight that Oda had left potentially since chapter 1 of One Piece. Of course, this is all assuming that what's going on with Luffy has a direct tie in some way to Joy Boy's soul. Like Joy Boy's soul is now inhabiting Luffy's body in some capacity. But again, for the immediate future, we have to see how these next few chapters go, because they're pretty important when it comes to clearing up exactly what's going on with Monkey D. Luffy. On that note, the chapter rating. Because we still don't know what is going on exactly, I have to rate the chapter far more on the fundamentals than anything else. Since, again, we just don't know what's happening exactly. We're just chilling on a cliff where Oda put us on. So, compared to the last chapter, I would say this chapter is just as good or slightly better. Therefore, I'm giving this chapter a 9 out of 10. Strictly based on the fundamentals and the fundamentals alone. The pace for this chapter was not as good as the last chapter, but it's still good because it does segue very nicely and smoothly into other disjointed areas through major character movements. Character is actually pretty good in this chapter, better than last chapter when it comes to Momonosuke and Yamato, when it comes to what's going on with Luffy, because that's crazy, obviously. Nami gets some love as well, absolutely. But when it comes to story, galaxies ahead of last chapter. Galaxies. This chapter is so pivotal for the actual story progression. You know. You already know. And the main reason why it's not a 9.5, to be quite frank, is because it's set up, obviously, and also it's left on a major cliffhanger that gives us nothing. So the future content that Oda does for One Piece is probably going to, it will affect this chapter in either a negative or positive way, and this chapter will go down in rating or go up in rating based on future material. Like, let's say for an overall arc rating. This is why Oda's execution of this moment over the next chapters of this arc are pivotal. So, on the lookout for a lot of Joy Boy theory videos to come.